questions. I'd rather keep it a buck, 100 if you ask me.
Just got to fight. It's really a dog fight. It doesn't matter what they scheme and what we scheme. It's just who plays harder and who wants it more. One thing we try to preach out here is a family.
3,000 is your new zero, so I'm broke now at 3,000. So the minute I hit 3 guys, I have no money.
Back again with another episode, man, on Perfecting Progression. This one will be episode 9. Got another special guest, man. I'm very, very happy to have him on the platform, man. This is definitely like family, like my brother. And this episode will be called Financial Free Game. Just to kind of give a introduction, man, definitely an established individual here in the state of Minnesota. He's a Minnesota native, more specifically a St. Paul native. And he's an alum of, Woodbury High School, University of St. Thomas. He's been in the NFL and AFL Arena Football League, had a 3-year professional stint, a radio and sports analyst, within that realm, ESPN, WCCO, which is a part of CBS, Care 11, which is a part of NBC. He's also a co-founder and coach of Line of Scrimmage, which we're going to get more into, and then also currently right now providing financial advising and being in the game for about 10 years now. So definitely, again, glad to have him on and introducing Ayo Idowu. Thank you for being on the platform, my guy.
I appreciate that, man. You know that meme where they talk about the guest pastor be getting his bio read?
Yep.
He just got to look humble in the corner.
Yep.
I feel like that real quick.
Hopefully that introduction was good. Look, I definitely look at you as somebody that I look up to. I always tell you that, man, just with how I got introduced to you, the connection, where that kind of came from, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. But again, man, you being on this platform, being able to kind of share some game, specifically around, what the title is, Financial Free Game. But we're going to talk a little bit about a lot, which I kind of went through some of what Ayo's resume looks like, and he's going to have a lot of stuff to talk about that I think is going to be very beneficial to the audience tapping in. But just kind of going forward, I think just to kind of give them a little bit more of an insight around, our connection history. First thing first, I do want to shout out my guy, Winston Badir. That's my brother. That's how I got connected with Ayo. And yeah, man, I think it's, again, our lineage comes from, the football background, but that's kind of how it started. I got connected with Ayo through my guy Winston, was able to kind of pull up to one of the Gophers games when Winston was there coaching, and we kind of hit it off and kind of, got to know each other a little bit more, and now we're here on the platform, about to give some games. So hopefully, if you wanted to talk a little bit about that connection, that's kind of just how I went. I just kind of wanted to, give the audience some insight a little bit.
Yeah, man, no, it's exciting. I feel like Winston is doing some great things where he's at, and he's always introduced me to great people. I've been a fan of your podcast for a while.
Appreciate it.
So when you asked me to come on, man, I was super excited. Even though it was tight getting it on the schedule for both of us, but I think it's definitely gonna be worth the wait.
For sure, man. For sure, man. So and again, I know just talking a little bit about you yourself, kind of wanting to go into your background, your history. Letting the people know who you are. I know I said you're a Minnesota native, and then I also mentioned that you're a St. Paul native, but I want to know a little bit how your journey started. Of course, my background is kind of coming from the sports realm, so are you, but I kind of wanted you to walk me through how that looked, from, being in the youth spaces on through high school and then on the way to college as well.
Yeah, man. So, like you said, St. Paul native. I like to say I spent most of my life in St. Paul.
Yep.
We moved around a lot as kids, but most of it was spent in St. Paul over on the east side. But Oakdale for a year, North St. Paul for a little bit. I ended up junior year of high school moving to the suburbs, moved to Woodbury. That's where I graduated Woodbury High School, but started at North St. Paul High School. Mm-hmm. But yeah, man, child of 2 immigrants, right? Immigrant parents were Nigerian, if you can't tell by the name. And I feel like I always say that, and I'm wearing the hat. Oh, I'm not wearing the hat right now, but I was wearing the Nigerian hat.
Yep.
Just because it's big as far as my upbringing and just the way I think and the way I move, right? Yep. So I always make sure I mention that. But yeah, man, played sports. Played like 5 different sports in high school.
Talk about it.
Football, basketball, baseball. Played lacrosse for a little bit. Even ran track, right?
Yep.
So sports was big on my upbringing, and it was one of those things where when it was time to kind of pick a sport, like college football was the only thing I was really getting a lot of love for. I actually used to love hooping. I was a self-proclaimed hooper growing up.
Okay.
But I was a center as a kid. Mm-hmm. But I ended up being 6'2" in high school. You ain't really gonna be a center at 6'2". So I ended up gravitating towards football, and that's where I had gotten recruited and ended up at the University of St. Thomas. So I played there, which was a small school, so didn't think pro football was going to be the realm for me. But, after a really good senior year, being an All-American and in my opinion, one of the best players in the country, if not the best player in the country. But I let the judges decide who was who.
For sure.
Our team, we were able to go to the national championship and got on the national stage and got reached out to by like agents, scouts, and it was crazy because like nobody had ever even gotten that far from my school in like 20 years. So that was an honor to even be there. But yeah, man, was in the NFL real briefly. People said they had a cup of coffee in the league. I had like a shot of espresso in the league, but I was with the Seattle Seahawks 2013.
Still an achievement, my guy.
Yeah, I appreciate that
right
man.
now.
And then Arena Football League for a year in Portland and Los Angeles. Then actually in the Canadian Football League, so I played in the CFL too.
Okay.
I was up with the Edmonton Eskimos.
Okay.
Up in Edmonton, Alberta. And
Got
then
it.
when I got done playing ball, actually before I started playing ball, I was an intern at different places in the finance realm. Wealth management being probably the one that I took the biggest liking to.
Yep.
And then when I got done playing, there was a black man managing my money who brought me on as his junior at Wells Fargo's where I started my career, and that was 10 years ago now. So I've been in the game 10 years as an advisor before moving to the firm I'm at now.
Yep. And I think, one thing that kind of struck me a little bit is just the journey of you going to school and playing ball. So I think where I wanted to rewind a little bit, what kind of stuck to me is that Minnesota alone, I think, is a state of it's known for being a basketball state. Hockey, basketball. And I know when I first came out here, I didn't really look at most of the talent out here as like just football guys.
Yeah.
So for you to just kind of talk about like you still had a love for basketball, but I'm looking at your physique, I'm like, man, you a football player, bro. But
I am now.
Yeah. So that was just something that kind of stuck to me because that was a conversation I had with Cashman as well. And he was like, man, I was damn near gonna take a scholarship to University of St. Thomas and play football and basketball.
Right.
So that was something I was just like, what? Like just being in that space of being a ball player, football player, I'd never looked at it like that.
So it's funny you say that, bro. I feel like you ask any of the football players that have left Minnesota and done some good things, we all kind of have the similar story, right? We got teammates from Texas, teammates from Florida, teammates from Ohio, whatnot, more football meccas, Georgia being one as well, too, Florida. We've always felt like we had to represent our whole state on all of our teams, right? Every NFL team probably got a player from Minnesota, 2 if they lucky, but they almost look at us like, man, they don't play no football in Minnesota. And it's just one of those things that, like, throughout my career, I got a lot of teammates where it's just like we're putting on for them, right?
Exactly.
Which is kind of how, me and my partner started the whole line of scrimmage thing, just trying to bring football on a wider scale at a higher level to some of these young kids.
For sure. And going through your journey when you was at University of St. Thomas, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, your education focus, and then also you kind of just, touching on the importance around it. You got your bachelor's degree in finance, if I'm correct, right?
Finance with a focus of investments.
Got it. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about what kind of led you to that point.
Yeah.
And then why is it important, of course, we know it's important for everybody, if you're going the college route to receive a degree, but speaking more so from, the sports realm as a football player, why is it important to make sure you're getting that, certification of making sure you have that backbone?
Yeah, for sure. So, first and foremost, I think going to a small school, you really definitely got to focus on getting your degree because normally, like if you just look at the numbers, pro sports isn't the prospect of anybody at that school, right? Especially at that time. I think it's changed a lot since I've been there. But at the time you were there to play football, have a good time, but just know that like in 4 years you're gonna join the workforce. But man, I was always a math kid. Math was the only thing that ever made sense to me. I hated my English classes, my reading classes. It's not that I couldn't read. I just feel like those classes were so ambiguous with their answers. They'd be like, oh yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. But somehow I always end up with the wrong answer, right? Meanwhile, math, like 1 + 1 is 2.
Exactly.
In every language, in every country. I was always talented in the sense of I could look at a math problem and figure out how to get the answer, or I wouldn't listen in class and I go home, do the homework, look at it, okay, this is what they went through. So I've always had that talent. My grandmother, she was a school teacher back in Nigeria. And when we were kids, my parents were at work. My grandmother raised us for the most part while my parents were working. and she wouldn't let us out the house until we did like 10, 15 math problems. So it's funny, I got to kindergarten, I could already do math, I could already read, I could already write my name, I was doing multiplication in kindergarten, right?
Very
Like a lot of
advanced.
kids aren't learning that till later.
Yep.
So math was just something that came easy to me, and it was very comfortable. So when I knew, I went to school to be an accounting major. I didn't know what accounting was. I thought it made money, and I knew it was a lot of math. But there was a gentleman in the dorms next to me, man, and I worked a lot on campus. Like I worked a lot, probably like 20 hours a week while playing football, just because I wanted to have some money in my pocket. And I remember there was this dude next to me in the dorms, and bro, I thought he was selling drugs. Like he never worked. Like he had all the J's. He was drinking the good liquor. You know what I mean? You know, in college we were drinking the BS, but he was drinking like grown man liquor. And then on top of that, he had a plasma screen TV. Now I went to school in 2008, right? So like, if you had a plasma, you had bread.
Exactly.
Like, everybody in the dorms had like the fat booty TV. You know what I'm talking about? Like the TV with the big back. So like I swore El Chapo lived next to me. When he told me he was kind of like day trading and doing finances, which I never really saw black folks do that before. I took a liking to it. And I remember like that Monday after he kind of put me on game, I switched my major from accounting to finance with a focus of investments. Because I'm like, damn, like if I could teach this to people, or if I can learn this myself, I could change the trajectory of A, my life, but B, like my parents and my family who've worked so hard to create opportunities for me. They wouldn't have to work until God knows how long. I got a lot of aunts and uncles that, you know, as black folks, we are very good at surviving, but we're not necessarily good at creating long-term wealth, right? Like survival is just so first nature to us that we feel like even if we have an abundance of resources, we still are trying to survive, right? So that's really where, you know, getting into wealth management realm just kind of fit those goals, understanding numbers and trying to teach people kind of like the next step in the next part of life.
Facts, man. You dropping jewels already right in the beginning. I'm loving it. And I think, you know, as we transition, like, you know, having that spark of knowing where you wanted to take your career, you know, identifying that in the college realm, you know, being able to kind of stay close to the game but still evolving. I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you know, how did, you know, continuously identifying those skills outside of the sport of football, how did that continue? So a lot of the things that I was able to kind of, you know, step into the space of meeting you and knowing the things that you really do excel in. It is speaking, it is advising, it's educating, it's mentoring. I see you do this on a day-to-day basis. And it's somebody that, you know, whenever I'm seeing you, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on different workshops that you hosting, I'm like, man, like, I'm not hating. I'm learning from you, because I'm like, man, he's actually, alone of me saying that you established, this is just stuff that as a young black kid, I know I wasn't seeing that type of stuff when I was growing up.
100%.
So now that I'm seeing it at 28 years old and you doing it for young kids right now, I already know that's impactful because it's impacted me. And I know the space that I'm in, I'm always trying to look to be just like somebody who can pour into me, and I can pour into them as well. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about just identifying those skills outside of the sports and then doing some of the things around speaking, advising, educating.
Yeah, man. Well, first and foremost, I feel like tutelage is a big word. It was just always about me. Never been a big reader. I'm trying to be better at that.
Damn, that is crazy.
I know. I watch.
It's crazy because I never liked reading.
Yeah, I never loved it. It wasn't a great way to pass time. I do like documentaries, and I've always surrounded myself with really smart people or people that are doing the things I want to do, right? So like a big thing for me was like whether it was football, whether it was finance, whether it was business, I'd find somebody I thought was successful, especially in the way I wanted to be. And I would be a mentee. Right? I would try to add value. I would watch, I would emulate. And the funny thing about what you're talking about with, you know, just working with the kids is like one of the most impactful trips for me was in middle school. We got family in D.C., and my great aunt, she lives in Upper Marlboro, PG County. PG County is probably the richest black county in America, right? And we saw a neighborhood out there that looked like a Woodbury or an Edina, and that's where my great aunt lived. Except the difference is, if in Minnesota, a lot of our black folks, our black communities are in the city, right? And the black successful folks usually end up going to the suburbs, but our black middle class is not like Detroit, where you know there's nice black neighborhoods. It's really it's not geographical here.
Segregated almost.
I wouldn't even say it's segregated. We just don't have like a geographical black middle class where black folks reside in Minnesota.
Exactly, I get that.
Right?
Yep.
Most of our black neighborhoods are places where, you know, a lot of our professionals don't end up wanting to live once they've kind of made it. You know what I mean? But I remember going to PG County, and my great aunt, it's when it hit me, because as a kid, you know, I was good at school and I did my homework, but like it wasn't cool amongst my friends to be successful. So I always thought that I'd be a sellout, or I would be acting like the white kids if I just started getting good grades and wanted to do good for myself.
Yep.
But this trip changed me, man, because my great aunt, she, you know, we were looking at her house. She got a beautiful 4,000 square foot house in Upper Marlboro. Her neighbor was a black doctor. Kitty Corner was a black lawyer.
Yep.
Then we had a black principal. Then we had a black businessman. Then we had a black this, black that. And it was like, I saw a neighborhood that looked like Edina, Minnesota, but it was filled with us. And that was the first time I learned that I could be successful, or I could achieve, you know, scholarly things that's normally not popularized amongst us, especially back then as kids, without having to give up who I was. So that was big for me, man, and that's why I always try to pass that off to the next generation, because I struggle with it a lot.
Thanks.
There's a picture, if anybody's ever Zoomed me while I work from home, there's a picture in my office in my background. I bought it in Nigeria. It's a young baby in a diaper, and he's pointing at a picture in the picture. And the picture's a young man with a cap and gown on, right? And that picture speaks volumes to me, because at one point in my life, I was that baby.
Yep.
Pointing to the people that have already made it, saying, I want to be like them.
Yep.
I want to follow them.
Yep.
Right? And in some rooms, I'm still that baby, but I like to think that now I'm the kid with the cap and gown where babies are looking at me.
Yes.
And it's important for me
Yes.
to not only be visible, but to be able to be open to learn and teach, so that more babies can point at me and be cap and gown people in the future.
Facts.
Now, to this day, like, I'm still the baby. Like, I was just down in Chicago with some mentors. We had some meetings with some other black advisors, and when I'm in them rooms, I'm the baby again.
Exactly.
I'm back in the diapers, right?
Yep.
But when I'm leading my workshops for the kids, for corporate employees, for some of my athletes, I feel like I'm the one in the cap and the gown trying to make sure that they are going through. So I feel like in life, you're either the baby or you're the graduate. Which one are you gonna be?
And what I would say to that, man, I think, you know, you can't ever go a day without learning.
Period.
Every day it's a day to learn something. And I think one thing that you spoke about is that right in the beginning we talked about reading and how we kind of grew up just hating reading. I know I'm kind of in the space of getting better at consistently reading books. But outside of that, what you said was that surrounding yourself with individuals who you can see yourself, you know, learning from. And I think that's so important, because one, I'm a very authentic person. I like to network, I like to build relationships, but within that authentic space, you know, I definitely want to make sure nothing is coming off fake.
Yeah.
I call you my brother, I call you my family, because I really mean it, and I can really learn from you. So I think if people understand the power of surrounding yourself with not only like-minded individuals, it can be somebody who doesn't think is like you, but you're still learning from them, because it's gonna help you more as a what do I want to say, personal development.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's important, man. I'm glad that you hit on that, because that's kind of how I look at myself, you know, just kind of going through young adulting, you know, being in your 20s. You know, it's a few people that I think about, like I said, Winston Delattibadir, Jonathan Johnson. I had Jonathan Johnson on my platform. He was my first guest on my platform in season 1. You know, just a few people that I look at, and I might not be around them every single day, but them is people that it's like they make me make sure I'm doing the right thing.
And they help you, like, as an athlete, you got this competitive spirit. It's not jealousy, right?
Right.
It's okay to compete with your friends, because competition, as you know, just raises the level of play.
Iron.
You know what I mean? But I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because if you're competing with people that are below you, another analogy, I just remember we had this park over in North St. Paul called Northwood Park, and it was like a 230-foot fence. I was a baseball player. This might have been like 200-foot fence. And I was always known to, like, play down to my competition. And I never hit a home run out that park my whole youth. Never hit a home run. And it pissed me off, because, like, I could hit farther than 200. We got another park called McKnight Park, right? That was 300 feet. I used to hit the fence all the time.
Yep.
I don't know what it was about me, but when I'd be in a room full of, when I get to that smaller fence, I wasn't swinging as hard, or I was thinking it was easy, and I wasn't really pushing myself. Meanwhile, when I felt like these goals weren't achievable, I would swing harder, right? So that analogy really is just speaking, like, when I put myself around people that are doing better than me, when I put myself around people that are smarter than me, it makes me act out of character and be better.
Exactly.
But I feel like when when I get into rooms or if I start competing or comparing myself to people that we're either the same or like maybe I might be the leader of the pack. Like I don't see the best out of myself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And it's not saying that I'm just like removing people from my life that are a little more talented, but it's just I'm very intentional with when I wake up in the morning, what goals I'm setting and who I'm trying to be around.
You're very
for that
evaluative,
day.
and what you should be when you're going through life. You might be in those spaces. It's not to knock your growth, but it's just to be evaluative as you might be in those spaces.
100%. Yeah.
You know, so
and competing with that too. And
for
it's
sure.
a friendly competition. It's never hate. It's never shade.
For sure. And I think just to kind of also talk more about staying close to the game. You talked a little bit about it. You being the co-founder of Line of Scrimmage. I wanted you to talk a little bit more about what exactly is Line of Scrimmage. What is that organization? What services do they offer? I actually think it's a great organization that's going on.
Yeah.
And is it only a staple here in Minnesota?
For now.
Yeah. But I want you to talk a little bit about that and what that is.
I'm actually stepping away from Line of Scrimmage a little bit. I'll still be doing some coaching, but it won't be me running it like it's been in the past. But what Line of Scrimmage is, it's we just train and teach high school, college, and NFL players how to just be better at their sport and craft. Like I talked about it before, kind of at the beginning, is when I was playing pro ball, I'd have these teammates from these football meccas who were getting game given to them when they went home in the offseason. I remember one of my dogs, Eric Crocker. Shout out Eric Crocker. That's somebody you should get on the podcast.
Okay.
He's like my big bro when we was playing in the Arena League. He's like, man, I can't wait to get home because we about to get some work in. And I just remember saying like, dang, like the best I ever got was being here with y'all and competing with you guys. When I go home, it's really me, a weight room, and maybe some high school kids. Like nobody's really coming back to Minnesota to compete like that. And he was telling me how like Brandon Cooks and Stevie Johnson, all the way down to like middle school kids, go to the same field every Saturday and just get better. And I'm like, I think that's why these cities that don't have better athletes than us, but that's why these cities are able to kind of bring out more football players because they are getting together and the old heads are teaching the young kids are working and kind of creating that level of football. So
talk about it.
Line of Scrimmage was, after my second year playing, which was in the Arena League, I came home and I just wanted to get high school kids together, college kids together, pro kids, all at the same field. Like I grew up in St. Paul, like a mile away from Terrell Suggs, but I never worked out with him once a day in my life. Yeah,
he's from Minnesota.
He from St. Paul.
What?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Larry Fitzgerald, Terrell Suggs. We got some.
Fitzgerald, I knew
we
that.
got some
Terrell
big
Suggs?
names. Yeah, people don't realize that, right?
I didn't know that.
And it's just because, like, I don't blame him. Like, he probably stayed in Arizona in the offseason or stayed in Baltimore because there was more athletes working out there. But I wish some of our big names would come home and do some stuff like that. So that's kind of how we got started. And then I was just doing it for free while I was between. And then parents started paying me. And, I was just, when I got done playing, I was still in the wealth management business, but it's a slow start to the business. So I needed something to keep my sanity, but B, obviously some, a little bit of side cash was nice. And that's how we started Line of Scrimmage, where we were just working with D linemen, and then we started working with O linemen. Now we work with linebackers, tight ends, and it started out with literally just me. Then I brought on my partner and co-founder, Cole Quay, who's also my big bro, actually. He came and spoke to my team while he was in the NFL, and I told him I want to be like him, and I followed him around for the next 2 summers, but that's another story. And then, we ended up growing it. Like now we're like 10 coaches, like 100 athletes. I can't tell you how many guys we've sent to college, over 30 guys we've sent to the NFL. Like it's been a great opportunity to just teach more. And again, feel like the theme of my life is learning something and then sharing the game. And that's kind of how football was, as well as wealth management.
And I think from my end, as I listen to you talk, when you talk about sharing the game, the power of connections and relationships also lies in learning the game from people that can share the game.
Exactly.
So when you're talking about your big bro, I want to talk about this. Like when you talk about big bro, it's like I'm already looking at you as the big bro of the room.
Exactly.
So for you to say, "Oh, I got somebody who I look at as big bro," my mind goes to like, man, there's just so many connections to be made because there's so much game to be learned.
Well, it's like I talked about before, man. Like in some rooms I'm wearing the diaper, in some rooms I'm wearing the diploma. You know what I mean? It's just everybody taught somebody something, right? Even Barack Obama had big bros. Now he's everybody's big bro, right? But like at the end of the day, it's actually weird too when I got little homies being called big bro on the gram. I'll be laughing. I'm like, bro, you 19. How you big bro? You know what I mean? But yeah, it's just kind of like the circle of life. Like somebody taught it to somebody, to somebody, to somebody, to somebody who taught me, who taught the next person, who's going to teach the next person, who's going to teach the next person who's not even born yet.
Yep.
So I feel like, especially in our community, the Black community, that's kind of how things have always gotten passed down.
Yep.
It's just like through word of mouth and through big bros, big homies, whatever you want to call it.
Facts. And I don't know, I just think that is so fascinating to me because I think that has always been a theme in our culture for sure. But I think as we're just growing in time, I think it's becoming more pivotal with just the crazy times that we're in, making sure that, people who are younger than us, man, they can see different avenues and making sure that they're growing the correct way. So,
man, this next gen needs us for sure.
For sure. That's what I'm getting at.
They're going through some things that we definitely didn't go through. And
that's what I'm getting
it's important for us to be there for them because they got a lot of different things pulling them in a lot more directions than we were getting.
For sure.
So
for sure. And before we go into you kind of excelling in your career passion within financial advising, I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit more about what I wanted you to talk about a little bit is just the radio hosting. That's what I wanted you to talk about. I'm sorry about that. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about, again, you're staying close to the game, trying to figure out, because a lot of us athletes, I think when you're going through that transitional period, we all go through a phase of once ball is done, we still want to stay close to it because we've been playing it since we were so young. So to be, I'm gonna be honest, to see you, having partnerships with these different, with your alum, with your college, University of St. Thomas, doing ESPN radio, and then also the local news. I give you, my applause because I think that's dope, bro.
I appreciate it, man.
I just want you to talk a little bit more about how did you find your way into that avenue, and kind of go from there.
Well, when I got done, obviously training was something, but by the age of 25, I had spent the last 20 years of my life doing football every day. People always say, football shouldn't define you. And I did my best to not let it define me, right? Like I was on the student council in school.
Yep. I
was the president of the Black Student Union back in college, the African Student Association. I played instruments. I was in my church choir. I played the drums. I played the trumpet. I did a lot of different things, but you know how football is, bro.
Yeah.
The minute you walk into that locker room, I don't want to call it a brainwashing, but this is what you eat, sleep, breathe.
Yep.
Right? There's memes. People be tagging me in memes all the time. It's like when a retired athlete be trying to pass rush in the middle of in church, right?
Yeah.
It's just natural.
It's still in you.
It's always going to be in me. So talking about it was a great opportunity. I never thought I'd have that opportunity to go back to my school and do the play-by-play for the college games. And then that led to other things and leading workshops for coaches, consulting. But it's like in any other industry, if you do something for 20 years, you're considered like a master of it or a PhD.
Yep.
Right? So just because we're 25 and it's football doesn't mean that we don't have that same thing, right? I played football for 20 years. I played at a very high level for 5 to 7 years, right? At the end of the day, people will be willing to hear me speak about my insight on the game. And as a businessman, why not put a price on that? You know what I mean? So
I love that.
Don't do that as much anymore. I'm slowly actually have left, officially retired from ESPN radio.
How did you like it, man?
It was fun. It was fun, man. It was cool. It was great experience. I think production's fun.
Yep.
Shout out Corbu Status, who was kind of the senior partner with that. Dave Lee, who gave me my start. Actually, Dave, who's Minnesota famous. Dave Lee, 8:30 a.m. morning. Not 8:30. It was actually ended at 8:30. But the WCCO
Earlier
morning, WCCO morning show.
Yeah.
There were two people that were really influential with that, and Dave actually gave me the idea to take the football stuff and start speaking about finances because it's what I do every day. So shout out to you, Dave. Happy retirement too. But yeah, man, it was an amazing experience. Just getting to talk ball, not at a bar with your boys, just being loud, organized ball and taking notes and studying and still getting to watch film. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I just got to a point in life where it was not my main focus anymore.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But definitely good.
Yeah.
Definitely something good to experience and kind of have on your resume too.
Right. And it was on the side too, right? My mom always jokes that she's like, oh Lord, they paying you to talk. We've been trying to shut you up for your whole life.
Of course, the family goes.
Yeah, my mama know her baby could talk, right?
Yep.
So this is one of the things where it's I never realized speaking or presenting was a talent until a couple years ago. And when I realized it was a talent people didn't have, you better believe I'm gonna put a price on it. So yeah, that's how I got to kind of talking about football and finances as well too.
Yep. That's what's up, man. And going into that space of growing in investments in those financial spaces. Let's talk a little bit about I guess the key mentors. I know you talked a little bit about it, of like where that sparked when you was in college and seeing the individual who stayed right next to you and some of the things that he was dabbling in. But I wanted you to talk a little bit about as you began this journey within this space and now where you're currently, at a high level. But I wanted you to talk about key mentors that helped Ayo, and then also those key learning moments of like, this is what's going to kind of be my next adventure.
Yeah. So as far as the wealth management space goes, 1.5% of the industry is black. So again, when I talked about being a person of tutelage, especially up here in Minnesota, when I started, I was in offices full of white folks, which, nothing wrong with that. But again, like I said, I would always find somebody who was doing well and try to be like them. And when people don't look like you and you're trying to emulate them, I was almost not being myself. I was a little depressed when I started because I didn't see black success in this business. And I was finally blessed to have a black manager. His name is Sterling Lang. Shout out to Sterling. He was from Chicago and in St. Louis, and he moved up here to Minneapolis, and he was my manager. And it was a blessing having two black folks in the same office. But essentially, I remember he came up to me one day. He's like, "Man, what the hell are you doing?" I said, "What you mean?" He's like, "Why you be, walking, talking the way you talk? That's not how you talk for real. I'm just trying to be successful. I don't see anybody else acting like me or that looks like me, so I'm trying to be somebody I'm not." And he goes, "Look, you walk around here acting like a 60-year-old white man every day. I hate to break it to you, but if I'm looking for a 60-year-old white man to be my financial advisor, you're the last person I'm calling." And that just sat with me. I was like, dang, that's real. And
authentic.
Authentic.
That's what
he
he
gave
getting
it
at.
to me. The old black head, old heads, old black, like black old heads, man, they're going to put you on game and tell you the stuff you don't want to hear, but you got to hear. And we had a lot of candid conversations, but like that was one thing that changed the way I acted. So one thing you'll see with me, like I don't wear the 3-piece suit anymore like I used to. I still try to dress nice, but I'm still a young black man, and I do that every day. My swag is a little bit different. My approach is different, and I saw my career start to take off after Sterling had that conversation with me, and just when I started being myself, but still being the smart financial mind that I know I am, everything changed. When I stopped being somebody else and started being myself.
Facts. And I think one thing that kind of, what I want to say, it makes me think about the transition of, depending on what environment you're coming from. Again, where I'm from, Detroit, predominantly black.
What up, though?
Yeah, what up, though? So coming from, my environment and then going into Minnesota, it was somewhat of a culture shock to a degree because now I'm around predominantly white. I went to the University of Minnesota. At the end of the day, I knew how I could excel within sports, and I knew I was a very sociable person, but I had to understand the true language of my friends and people who I was hanging out with that might have been white. What you are essentially getting at. You are a person who's in a position to highly excel, and they already got you in a position because they trust you. But you never been in these type of spaces with other people of your colleagues that you're in a space of predominantly what it is. So now it's like, of course you don't want to act like them, but you want to show that you can adapt and play that game too. So I think going through those experiences and being able to see that representation of somebody who looks like you and you can look up to, and he giving it to you like, hey, look, everything you're doing is, A1, like continue to do it, but now you need to be yourself.
Yeah, and he understands me too, right? Because a lot of folks, you'll get this in football too. Coaches are trying to change you if they don't understand you, right? Especially if you listen to a certain kind of music, if you walk a certain way, if you wear your pants a certain way. I even joke with my kids nowadays. I'll be like, hey man, don't be showing up to like stop wearing the shiesties, like little things like that. That was probably with us back in the day with the do-rags, right? We had a different color do-rag every time we stepped out the house. Did it mean nothing? No. Did sagging your pants mean nothing? No. But it was perceived a certain way. But I feel like when you get a mentor that understands you and where you're coming from, you're so much more receptive to that advice. And that was a big thing with him. Being from Chicago and, being black in his business, he knew my struggles because he dealt with them already. And he would tell me like where I needed to change or where I needed to lean into or where I needed to run from, right? And that was, I talk to him to this day. Every time I hit a new career milestone, he the first person I call. First person I call. So
that's what's up, man. That's what's up. And I think that was really important for you to even talk about. Just because I think it's just important about that representation because we know, even though we with people when you going to do these workshops and you hosting certain events, you might not know that certain individual or that certain young kid of what he's going through because you don't know what he's going through each and every day, but you can probably resonate because it's certain things that are similar to the life experiences that you've had, and which he can understand and say, oh no, he understands me,
Right, 100%.
you know. So I'm glad that you talked about that, and then also as we transition, you know, talking a little bit more about those dreams, recognition, and accolades. You know, one of the first things I wanted you to talk about was just, you know, I guess in the space that you are right now, you know, partnering with the largest wealth manager.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know, you know, what that truly means or how, like, what is that? I wanted you to talk about it because, again, you the expert in this space, but within that, you know, I guess, you know, within that, just understanding that you're in a position to be managing over, what is this, 750? I don't know if this is still the current number or if it's grown, but 750 million in assets.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted you to, as we're transitioning into that financial free game, I want you to kind of shed some light on.
But it's great, man. Like I said, if you could tell a theme with me, it's just like learning something and teaching it, right?
Yep.
You know, my goal is to just take a lot of people that are like me.
Yep.
Whether it's the fact that you come from, you know, working class, you can call it low income areas, whether it's the fact that you're first generation immigrant, whether it's the fact that you're a first generation professional or a person that went to college, whether you're black or whether you just have never understood money before.
Yep.
I want to change those people's lives.
Yeah.
Like that's you know, now don't get it twisted. We work with the long money too,
Of
right?
course.
Like definitely
course.
got
That's
to.
what I'm about to get at,
But like
too.
when we talk about the passion is like teaching people who don't get it how to get it.
Yep.
And then changing their lives down the road.
Yep.
Because I was so blessed, man. As an intern at the age of 20, you know, when you're 20, you just want, you know, some J's, you want a fat whip, you like a nice car, and some expensive clothes. And that's what was a sign of wealth to you as a kid. But the cool thing is at the age of 20, I was an intern at UBS Wealth Management, and I was putting together, I was prepping for meetings, and I would see people's finances, like rich people's finances. The dude would walk in with some busted shoes, some loafers, regular jeans, whatever, and I look at his account, I see millions, bro. Like I'd see people with $400K cash in the bank, not even stock. And my goals changed. It changed from the shoes, the car, the other stuff. Is like, I want my accounts to look like this. And that's the tough part about our business is that, or just people in general, like nobody shares their financial situation. You just see the result of it, right? So I could have a Benz, you could have a Benz. Mine could be paid off and I paid in cash. You could be leasing yours. I could have a house, you have a house, right? Mine could be paid off or something that I'm renting out on the other side, or you could be leasing yours, or you could have a really big mortgage and a heavy mortgage payment. I could have a nice watch, you could have a nice watch, and you know, just how you're paying for it. Mine could have been a gift, whatever. I guess what I'm trying to get at is people don't realize those things don't reflect on someone's financial situation. We can work at the same company, be both making $100,000, and I could have 3x what your net worth is because of the decisions I made. But you don't ever see those decisions, right? And in my job and in my line of work, I get to see the positive decisions and I get to see the negative decisions. And I try to just share people what those positive ones are so I can get you to that point where you're making a lot of money, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, that's when we talk about wealth management and what I do for people is like people use me as an advice giver, but at the same time, my goal is to educate so that I'm not only like the old wise man in the room giving game, but like usually like 3-4 years into my relationship with clients, like they're bringing stuff to the table and we're having a discourse about it rather than me just telling people what to do.
And I think one thing that kind of stood out, you know, with everything that you just said, because that was very powerful. I think being in this space, I think a lot of people who don't look like us, they could probably get in the habit of just only working with the long money, the people who only have that. With you talking about, I'm trying to turn people into millionaires, that's going into some of the things that, what is that? Essentially, you diversifying your portfolio, which we're going to get to that.
Dog, I'm going to say this real quick.
Go ahead.
How I got my start in the business was people that other financial advisors wouldn't work with because they didn't have a ton of money.
That's what I'm getting at. Yep.
Those are now some of my biggest clients to this day because I have the patience.
They wouldn't dare mess
them.
with those people.
100%. My thing is just giving people a chance, having them have the opportunity, but at the same time, now that I'm at that point where I'm considered a big financial advisor, the last thing I ever want to do is turn down somebody because they don't have enough money. My goal is to give everybody some free game and not be that person who's losing out on great opportunities.
Facts.
And building a firm that has an option or an answer for everybody.
Facts, man.
So-
That's what's up, bro.
Because I used to laugh at them dudes that would turn down that business, and all of a sudden now these people got $1 million with me.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I don't know what that dude's doing now. Good for him. But my thing is like, I never want to be that guy, right?
Facts.
Just like in football, like, you know, there was a point where you took over the starting spot from somebody. But now you the starter that somebody could easily take your spot. So the last thing you want to do is get passed up. I think the worst thing we can do in this world is fall off,
Yep.
right? Like you trying to get to the top, but staying up there's a battle too.
Yep.
Don't think because you got there you can chill. You definitely got to make sure nobody's going to pass you up and steal your spot.
Facts. And I'm trying to think of this quote right now. Inky Johnson, I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah.
him. Very big in the podcast game. Shout out to Inky Johnson. But it was a quote that he said, man, it was pretty much surrounded just always updating your toolkit.
Yeah, it's a must.
It's a must because he said pretty much it was one thing that he said. He was saying that you know, we got to certain points, you know, with understanding that with what we're equipped with, what we're talented with, it got us to a certain point.
Yeah.
But as we're growing, you might have to change that.
Right.
You're going to have to change that because not every phase in your life is going to require that same. It's not going to require that same routine of probably what you did. You have to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people, making sure that you're just understanding
And
different
challenging yourself.
And what you
because
said
what
too,
worked before may not always work.
and you
right?
said something about decisions, like the making money part as far as that, you know, we just might not be able to see it, but my decision making is just better than yours.
100%.
That's what you was getting at, and I feel
having
like
good people in your corner is going to tell you yes and no, not just people telling you yes. Dog, you from Detroit, Chevy Motor Company, Dodge, Chrysler,
Yep.
Ford,
Yep.
right?
Big-
are all
big in the
companies.
automotive game.
Big automotive game, but not as much anymore, right? Who
Yep.
passed them up? The Toyotas of the world, the Teslas of the world.
Yep.
I mean, Detroit kind of had its own issues in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s because all that stuff left, right? Let's talk about Blockbuster, right? Blockbuster, man, if you our age, Blockbuster was it. That's
Yep.
where you spent your Saturday night. There's not a store open in the world right now because they got passed up by who? By Netflix. You know what I'm saying? I feel like if you're not willing to look where your flaws are and
to evolve. Yep.
football analogy, watch film on yourself, not just only your opponents.
about it.
Watch film on yourself and
about it.
figure out what you suck at or
Yep.
what you're good at or where there's a place for you to get better.
Because if you don't work on it,
Because if you
it's
don't,
gonna-
because somebody watching film on you, dog.
Yep.
Like if you're not getting right, somebody watching film on you and trying to
Facts.
exploit your weaknesses.
Yep. And then before we go to the next topic, you know, you sounding. I don't want to say you sounded like my dad, but my dad, you know, he'll always say whenever I'm playing a football game, like he'll be yelling from the stands, but he'll always tell me whenever I get in the car after games, he'll be like, "You better know that somebody up in that box is watching. You know, somebody's watching the D-line, somebody watching the linebacker, somebody watching that secondary. So if you back there squatting, if you ain't doing what you're supposed to be doing, just know they circling your number.
Yep.
And they gonna come right at you.
Period. That's what we did, right?
Yeah.
Anytime we watch a film, like, oh yeah, 15 a sucker. He's
Yeah.
gonna get it this week.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, he got slow hands. I'm gonna expose that, right?
Yep.
Just know somebody watching it about you.
Facts. And just talking a little bit more about you, like, you know, I wanted you to talk a little bit more about the dreams aspect. I know we had conversations, you know, of course, off the pod, but just talking a little bit more about maybe starting your own black firm or being a published author. I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit more about those goals or any dreams that
Yeah,
you
man,
might have.
I'm proud to say that over 60% of my clientele is black, and there's not many people in this country. Like, even there's a lot of black advisors, but not even, like, most of those advisors can't even say that and top that. So I'm very proud of that.
Yep.
I've noticed just in this game that when people are looking for black wealth, I mean, there's a lot of black money in Minneapolis. They're always, you know, running to the Chicagos, the DCs, and the Atlantas of the world, looking for somebody like me.
Yep.
There's no black-owned firms in the Twin Cities, and that's my goal, man. Like, I would love to have a black-owned firm, black-ran, black-operated firm here in the Twin Cities at some point. That's like my 10-year goal in this business. Now, whether that's taking over this firm completely or whether that's branching off and starting my own thing, we're not going to talk about the details about that, but that's kind of my goals there, man. I just feel like it's something that's needed. This business, I mean, corporate America is probably the whitest place in the world. And then we take it further, the financial industry is probably the whitest place in corporate America. It will be the last, if ever, to be desegregated, especially, you know, with what's going on in Capitol Hill right now. They're trying to slow that stuff down. So I think it's important that the people that are in it are making a conscious effort to make sure that there's not only folks that look like us getting the service they need, but folks that look like us getting the opportunities they need. Because because they're thin. And as long as we don't if we continue not to put each other in good places to succeed, it's only going to get thinner.
Facts. And, with all that being talked about, I definitely want to share some recognition to my guy, Ayo. He was definitely an individual who was recognized in Forbes, for being in the wealth management game, man. And I just kind of want to give you your kudos on that because I think that's just big, man. Of course, like I said, I always see you on a lot of platforms, man. I'm very big on the LinkedIn platform, but I always see you doing your thing on there. But to also just kind of do your own research and understand, like, this guy ain't just talking. he making it happen and putting action behind the words of what he's doing in the specific industry that he's working in. So definitely wanted to give you your kudos. I didn't know,
that, man.
if you want to talk more about just getting that accolade, you can. But I definitely want to kind of give you your kudos here on the platform.
Man, I don't want to talk about it. I mean, God is good. I'm not better than anybody. I just have a lot of favor and a great team around me.
Yep.
So that being said, we do a good job for one person. We scaled it, repeated it for over 1,000 people now, and people took notice. So that's a blessing.
Facts. And as we transition, just talking a little bit more about that financial free game and some of the offer services that you provide. I want to talk a little bit more about you've been talking about it a lot, but just the intentionality around diversifying your portfolio.
Yeah.
So when we talk about those families of color, you working in the sports realm, business owners, executives, things of that nature, I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit more about what it truly means to diversify your portfolio.
Yeah, man. It can mean a lot of stuff. Y'all, did you watch Chappelle's show? You remember
Chappelle's show? Yeah.
You remember with Wu-Tang Financial? Diversify. You need to diversify your bonds. But no, man, it's I think diversification is important just because, I mean, if your only means of income is your job, you could lose your job.
Yep.
If your only means of income is your business, you could lose your business. If your only means of income is stock, well, stocks can go down, right?
Exactly.
I think when I talk about wealth and I see some of my richest clients, and the funny thing is I advise these people, but I also learn from these people, right? And when I see some of my richest clients, I always ask to myself, how did they get here?
Yep.
Cool. Now, how do I replicate that, right? And one of the biggest things is just having multiple sources of income, multiple sources of money in different places, or your efforts are being targeted a couple other places to where at some point, even if one engine stops working, if I got 8 different investments or 8 different things that I'm involved in, if one stops working, you're still, you still got 7 left that are making stuff happen, right?
Yep.
So I know in the black community, we love real estate. I don't know what it is about real estate that black folks gravitate towards, and I think real estate's amazing. But real estate can be tight and can be not liquid at the same time, right? I know some people just like stocks. I think stocks are great too, but at the same time, stocks can be down and not work, and there's other ways where you can kind of move that money. So one thing about diversification, I'm just saying, like, okay, you got your job, cool. Make sure you got your job. Make sure you're investing in that 401k at work. That's free, easy game, right? Like the 401ks have matches, meaning that like they're incentivizing you to invest into your own self and your own future, right? A lot of our parents had pensions because, back in the day, that's what they did. They basically gave you your salary for the rest of your life, right? Pensions aren't a thing anymore. So like investing in whether it's 401ks, IRAs, XYZ is important. But if we talk about the match back again, let's say I go to a CEO offer me a job for like $100,000 and I say, man, I only wanted 90. Go ahead, keep the last 10,000. I don't need that. You look like a goofy, don't you? Like, why would you ever give back money? You know what I mean? But that's what people are. Whoops, did it fall off? Oh, my bad. Put this back in. My bad. We good?
Oh, good.
I was just getting to the good part. But
matching, giving back money.
Yeah, but imagine like when you're not matching, taking advantage of like free money in 401ks, that's basically what you're saying is like, nah, I'm cool. I don't want to take part of what's in my compensation plan. Yep. And I feel like when it's just like low-hanging financial fruit, the 401k is big. Life insurance. I think life insurance is important. Now, there's a lot of people and advisors out there abusing life insurance and just trying to get people to buy things that they don't need. But at the end of the day, if I'm making $100,000 a year over the next 10 years, I'm scheduled to make $1 million. Now, if I have a family, a mortgage that people rely on me and I die, that income is gone. I think life insurance is one of those things that every family, every person should at least take a look at or have invested. Probably term life insurance to where at least I can replace that income that I didn't have an opportunity to make yet, right? Disability insurance. We see people getting in car accidents, right? I'm a big Marvel fan, Doctor Strange. That's my favorite superhero. If Doctor Strange had disability insurance, he would have never been a superhero, never went to Comitage and learned how to do the mystic arts and all that stuff because You know, he was a surgeon who went broke because he couldn't make no more money because his hands were messed up, right? But I joke and say that it's just like if you can't do the thing that is producing money for you, you need to insure that. Athletes, same thing. You need to insure your knees if you're a route runner. You get what I'm saying? Insure your business if you do a business that can go under. I would also say another thing too is just like having an emergency fund. I talk about that all the time. If you follow me on social media, you see I'm always talking about emergency funds and cash. I think cash is the number one thing. We talk about Americans. 60% of Americans can't fund a $600 need if they had to right now. They'd have to buy it on credit. And that's how people can spiral out of control. I think before you even get investing, before you even get in savings, I think everybody should just focus on having like 3 to 6 months worth of just income set aside in a bank, not invested just in cash. That way, if you do get in trouble, if you do lose your job, if your business goes under, if somebody dies and you have to foot the bill, you got a pool of money you can pull from rather than a pool of debt you can pull from and continue to spiral. So like when we talk about free game, anytime I'm speaking to like a group of high school kids or young college kids, those are like the 4 things. I'm just like, I call it my financial low-hanging fruit.
Yep.
Like those are like the low-hanging fruit that like until you can even come talk to me and be a client of mine, like those are the 4 things you got to be doing first and foremost.
Yep. Man, he dropping game, man. He dropping game. I'm loving this, man. That was just a whole snippet. And I think just to kind of rewind it back a little bit, just more so in that sports space, you know, Ayo has been a very big, you know, player in the athlete realm. And I think, you know, just even just what was that? We're in March. The combine was when? The combine was
last week of February.
So just speaking about that, you know, Ayo is also NFLPA institutional advisor.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've seen you kind of dabble into the NFL realm, and I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit more about that athlete space and how that looks for you.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's we all know the stories of, like, athletes going broke, whether it's bad decisions or whether it's bad people giving them bad advice.
Yep.
The NFLPA is partnered with the NFLPA has kind of like a certified financial advisor program they have, but I'm an institutional advisor, meaning that my institution works directly with the PA, and we get trainings directly from the NFL and the NFLPA on contracts, benefits, X, Y, Z, to where we can provide whether it's tools for their athletes, current, future, and former.
Yeah.
Right, and that's been a program I've been pretty deep in the last 2 years. And it's just natural for me, especially being a football player. Like, I've worked with a lot of athletes over the years, a lot of coaches, a lot of scouts, a lot of agents, but now kind of diving headfirst into that realm intentionally, right? I just think with my market, people have always gravitated towards me. But now with having these tools and understanding the difference in compensation these athletes get, that's really been a big focus of mine. So my big thing is just like, look, you know, football players make a lot of money, but at the end of the day, I got an old lady that works for Cargill that got more money than some of my biggest athletes. Why? Because she's been steadily making that money for 30, 40 years. As athletes, I mean, the NFL average career is 2.5 years. You hear people saying NFL stands for not for long. It don't matter if you make $1 million. If you're only making that for 2.5 years, $2.5 million isn't enough to fund your life. You got to have an after plan, whether it's having a second job or a second career, or whether that's putting your money away and making sure it's in vehicles that will provide income for you down the road.
Talk about it.
Understanding the benefits, like I read the NFL benefits back to front, right? So I know that stuff. And same thing with basketball. I'm always understanding my clients' compensation and what they need and what their goals are at all times. And that's been exciting for me, man. Just I've always worked in kind of the business and corporate realm.
Yep.
But going into the sports space head first, working with football, basketball players, and entertainers has been super exciting because it's like I remember being there and I remember looking at a contract and being like, dang, like I'm gonna change my family's life. And then I remember that contract getting pulled right from under me and having nothing, right? So I remember being in locker rooms with people that got drafted first, second, third round. And now we playing in the Arena League together because they so far behind in child support, like it take another big $30 million contract just to get out of water, right? I'm really big on teaching young men life after football, but then on top of that, I'm really big on teaching my athletes how to make their money last longer than their career does. Because at the end of the day, we all going to be done, whether it's at age 20 or whether it's at age 35. You're going to be done, and still the bulk of your life is in front of you, and you're going to have a decision to make then.
Facts, man. You talking. I really don't got too much to like add to that, man. You giving game. I'm loving it, bro. And I think before we somewhat come to the close, I wanted you to talk a little bit because you talked a little bit about the pretty much the debt that people can find themselves getting into. But what I'm gonna get at is just that income versus wealth gap.
Yeah.
So like talking a little bit about how does calculating your net worth look like, but what I want you to educate. That's what you've been doing this whole time. I want you to educate. What does income versus wealth gap look like?
So
what does that mean?
I'm gonna pause you there because one thing that I'm spending a lot of my time on right now is the NIL stuff, and we'll get back to that question if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But as far as the NIL stuff goes,
Staying in the athlete space.
Yeah, definitely still going there.
For sure. My
so
bad.
obviously working with the NFL players and the NBA players has been kind of a big mode that we've been on the past couple of years.
Yep.
But NIL is one where like our babies need help, man.
Facts.
Like these kids need help.
And it's new. Talk about it.
Man,
it's very new.
We pay like we can either be salty old heads that's mad that we didn't get no bread when we was in school, or we can teach these kids how to grow up faster than they need to, right? Because at the end of the day, like we think about college, man. The cool thing about college and college football was, you got recruited, you got courted, and then all of a sudden you get on campus and you got somebody dog cussing you every day, right? But that was what you needed, right? You needed that to grow into the player you did. You didn't know at the time, right? And if I had money at that time and I had a grown man cuss me out, I made more money. I'm like, man, get off of me, dude.
Right.
Like, I make more, bro. My car nicer than you. I ain't trying to hear nothing you saying. But it was that 2 years of just grinding and learning how to be a pro before you're a pro. Now these kids are getting pro money before they've ever learned how to be a pro. So not only do they have to learn how to practice their craft, they got to learn how to manage their money, right? And then the NIL money, you're basically, if you know how NIL works, is they're going to do a revenue share with the schools, and they're basically going to pay these kids gross, right? And the gross thing about getting paid gross is like them taxes going to hit like crazy. And what I've been seeing with a lot of my athletes already, bro, is like, for example, if they got like a $100,000 NIL deal, they spent all the money before they came to me, obviously. Now they owe $30,000 in taxes. Now they got to wait for the next check to pay the last taxes.
Right.
And then the following year, they're going to wait for the next check to pay last year's taxes. And you in this endless cycle. So one thing we try and do is teach people, teach our kids about the NIL stuff, how the money's made, how to save for the future, how to be more intentional with your money, how to invest, how to create different savings vehicles or trusts or whatever. But really just teaching young kids about money, their parents too, about money before they ever have to. And I'm actually pretty proud. It's my first time announcing this, so I can't wait till this is on.
Yeah, man. I'm glad you're doing it on here.
In May, I'm going to be starting a free NIL course.
Okay.
So I probably have like 7 clients in NIL right now.
Okay.
Some of which, and I probably have even more clients that aren't officially clients, right? They haven't signed on. They're not paying us to do their work yet because they're not making enough money to where it makes sense to kind of be at this firm. But I've still been doing a lot of education, so I want to formalize my education. I'm going to start a 4-week course. Basically, these kids get to sign up, and they have to attend the course with their parents. It's going to be in May when they're off school. It's going to be 4 different sessions. So you're going to be having attorneys come speak, CPAs come speak. I'm going to be talking about wealth. We'll have maybe some agents come talk to them, have some school officials talk about how the money's going to be paid to them, know their rights. And we basically going to teach these kids the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of finance in 4 weeks. So I'm really excited about that because I think this is something brand new in the game. It's a new space, and I'm happy to be one of the trailblazers in the space. Nobody's doing this yet, so I'm excited to be one of the first, if not the first, to be providing something like this for people.
So yeah, man, I think another thing that I wanted to ask you, Ayo, is just the part about the financial free game is the income versus wealth gap. I think that's very important, and I think you have a lot of game to kind of shed on that. But just when it comes down to calculating your net worth, some people don't understand what that means. So I just kind of want to see if you could break down what does it truly mean to understand your income versus the wealth gap.
Yeah, man. And if you follow me on social media, you see me talking about this all the time because I feel like it's like sports where you're always looking up at the scoreboard and your net worth is the scoreboard. At no point in a football game do you not know what the down, the distance, and the score, right? I feel like that's the same thing with finances. It's just like knowing your net worth. Maybe not every day, but at least monthly, quarterly, annually, whatever it is. But your net worth is essentially your assets, which is the stuff you own, things of value, bank accounts, stocks, 401ks, plus like artwork, right? Like if I got a Pokemon card collection or a Beanie Baby collection or just some collection of Jordans, things that are worth the money that you could sell for a dollar amount, right? That's your assets. And liabilities is basically what you owe to people, whether it's loans on the stuff you owe, whether it's like your mortgage, car notes, student loans, X, Y, Z. If you take your assets minus your liabilities, that is your net worth, right? And we put that on what we call a balance sheet. And balance sheets is how you track wealth, right? So where a lot of people get confused is they're talking about incomes. I make this much. I make 100,000. I make 200,000. I make 150. I make this. It means nothing. Like kind of how we talked earlier in the interview, we talked about, two people making the same amount of money, but we having different net worths because the decisions of where I'm putting my money are different than the decisions you put in your money. For example, every time I buy a meal, that's money that goes from my income statement, never on my net worth, right? Because once you buy food, which again, we need food to live, but it's an expense. It's not really you buying something. Vice versa, I could buy, let's say, a brick of gold, necklaces, jewelry. I was watching one of my favorite movies, Paid in Full. Remember, like the Colombian drug lord? He had like the diamonds. He had all that money in diamonds in the crib because he was taking his cash, making it smaller, putting it in diamonds. So he was taking stuff from his income statement, putting it into the diamonds. And it's just like, not enough people are thinking about building that net worth. A, they don't know their score, right? They don't know the net worth. But B, they're not thinking about building that every single day. And where my mind changes, where my client's mind changes, is like when they're making money, they're thinking about how they can take it from their balance sheet, from their checking accounts, to their actual net worth page. So for example, I buy a car has value, it drops in value, so probably don't want to spend that much money on a car because once I put it in there, it actually would have made more sense to keep that in cash. I could buy a crib, right? You've seen how houses boom. If you buy a house, that's a good investment because the house is supposed to grow over time. You buy gold, gold is supposed to grow over time. Here's another thing. Ladies out there, right? We talk about purses. I was put on game a couple years ago by my niece, right? A Gucci bag, like you can't really resell that, right? But it might cost you $1,500. A Chanel bag costs $5,000. Naturally, we're gonna want to buy the Gucci because it's cheaper, but like that Chanel bag for $5,000 stays on your balance sheet because you can sell that again for $5,000 or as that bag starts to increase in value, right? I got a cousin who's big in watches, Rolexes, APs, XYZ. He buys that stuff because, he likes to wear it, but he knows that he can sell that for the price he bought it for or more, right? That's how we talk about putting stuff on our balance sheet. So once I add up all the watches I got, once I add up all the J's that I'm not wearing, once I add up the properties, the bank accounts and stuff like that, that's how you're keeping track. And what I tell my clients is, look, here's the fee you pay me. If we're not increasing your net worth by at least this fee, you should probably fire me.
Facts.
You know what I mean? Like that's the score we're keeping. So anytime I go into the game, anytime a coach says, hey, I'll get in there, first thing we're looking at, okay, it's third. It's long. They over here on the field. We're up by 5. Oh, it's a passing situation. I'm going to get in pass rush mentality. Same thing finance-wise. It's like you got to know the down, the distance, and the score before you can start figuring out what your next move is. I'm always telling people, it's like, look, we get to a point where we cover our expenses pretty easily. Every step you take now should be towards financial freedom or building your net worth, right? For example, as a business owner, more income might not change your life, but more equity could go crazy for you. I got clients at, Apple, Zoom, Amazon, Microsoft, and I'm telling them like, hey, you're making like $300K already. Why do you need $350? How about you start asking them for more stock? Because when that stock multiplies, you don't need the cash. You're already living a good, comfortable life. When that stock multiplies, now you got $500,000 of stock that you would have given up if you just took the $50K in cash that you probably would have spent on something stupid anyways. So when we talk about income versus wealth, I always say like income is cool, but net worth is really what matters out there. You got to be managing that net worth, and you got to be making sure that you stacking your chips to a place to where you know what your value is at all times. Even in a house, right? Like I buy a house and if I buy it for $100,000 and it doubles in price, but I got a $100,000 mortgage on it, like I just made $100K. Even though I can't touch that money, I know there's equity in there if I were to sell this house or take out a loan against the house. Like a bank will give me money because they recognize that.
Facts.
So I'm passionate about that. We talk about the black wealth gap, and black folks have been more educated in the last couple decades than ever before, getting higher paying jobs, just being more successful in their careers, but yet the wealth gap is widening.
Facts.
Black folks are worth less now than we were in the past, and white folks are passing us greatly. Part of that reason is the fact that we don't understand how to take money. I'm saying part of the reason, not the whole reason, right? There's a lot of systematic things there too, but we need to start taking our money as a people and putting them into appreciating things, into home ownership, into businesses. It's the knowledge for sure, right? And that's why I'm kind of on this big tear teaching people like, look, income versus wealth, two different things. You can make a lot of money and not be worth a lot, right? I can make $1 million and spend $1 million. I can make $50K and only spend $10K. I'm saving $40 a year. The millionaire, the $1 million person is not saving nothing. He's not putting nothing on his balance sheet. So I see that every day. I see people that don't make a lot of money worth millions. I see people make a lot of money that are sitting in debt. So
I honestly, bro, I think you would be the perfect person to be the trailblazer for this, bro.
I appreciate that, man.
And I'm being dead ass, and I think when I think about this, bro, like, of course, courses or classes being taught like this in college should be something that's for athletes. It should be something that's just what I want to say, basic, almost like a basic course should be. That's
Right.
something that should be happening. But also, I think before college, learning about how to manage certain things that you go into into day-to-day life stuff should be kind of taught even in high school,
100%,
even in
bro.
middle school, because I think every time I have a conversation with just people outside, of my, people like my friends or anybody, just understanding, if I could have got ahead of the game just more so in that earlier age in middle school or high school, learning about the stuff that we're dealing with now, because a lot of the stuff that we was doing with just having those classes, I feel like it doesn't apply currently. Right now, it only depends on your profession.
Yeah.
So what you about to give them game on is going to be something I think is definitely going to take them to the next level of just understanding like what some of these people out here in this world didn't get a chance to even.
So I get where you're coming from with that, but I'm gonna say this, bro. The system is built off people neglecting it, right? At the end of the day, like for example, my credit card company hates me. Why do they hate me? Because I pay everything through my credit card, and I pay my credit card off at the end of every month, and I get all the points, the trips, the hotels, the XYZs. Credit card companies make money because you take on a balance, and the longer you pay that balance, the more interest they can charge you. They don't charge me interest, but they give me all the perks, right?
Yep.
The thought process is they make money because there's people out there abusing credit, or there's people out there actually using the balances, and that's why they're willing to give you gifts.
Facts.
If everybody did that, the credit card companies would be out of business.
Exactly.
There's no money there, right?
Exactly.
Same thing with banks, same thing with loans, same thing with houses. So with that being said, you have to know this whole financial system is built off everybody making money off of each other's negligence. So if everybody knows everything, then it doesn't work out. And a lot of these banks are out of business. A lot of these credit card companies are out of business, XYZ.
Yep.
Now, if you're one of the few, you can benefit off of it, right?
Yep.
But I think there's obviously a reason why, they're not teaching us all of this stuff in school, because you can't give it away. You know what I mean? That's like, why would a doctor teach you how to cure yourself?
Yep.
Like, now the hospital got to pay their bills, right?
Facts.
Like, why would my man recording right now teach me how to do what he's doing with the podcasting?
Yep.
Because I'm going to take his job. You feel me?
Yeah.
So
But that's why it's good to build those connections, build those relationships, and that way you can kind of learn game, when you're growing in these different spaces, man. But outside of that, man, definitely, man, I'm definitely looking forward to this NIL course that you're putting together, man.
that,
You
man.
said it's in May?
yeah, it's going to start in May.
Man,
so depending on when this gets released, maybe this will be a commercial for it.
Facts, man. So I'm glad that you was able to kind of announce that on the platform. That means a lot. You coming on the platform means a lot. And, before I wrap up, is there anything you want to, say, shout out or do anything, man?
Yeah, man. A few other things I'm working on. I definitely want to write a book, especially on the stuff we talked about before. One of my goals in life is to be a published author. And I want to talk about people's money stories and how people got to either financial success or financial ruin. I think that'd be super important for individuals to understand what's going on behind the curtain. We talk about how you show up and how you look. You can see my whip, you can see my shoes, but you have no idea what's going on in my pockets, right? So I really want to start showing. I really want to start being in people's pockets. And then off that book, I actually might want to start a podcast too. I think that'll be fun, man.
It'd be perfect.
I think just
remember when I
interviewing
reached out
people.
to you, I thought you had one. I'm like, man.
No, so I
you remember that too.
I hosted a podcast for somebody, an entrepreneur in Texas. And that was a great experience and made me, it motivated me to do my own.
Yeah.
So that was huge.
You fit this space, bro.
I appreciate it, man. Like I said, my mom knows her baby can talk, right? So it's like, why not, give my gift of gab given by God to the people? So,
Facts, man.
Yeah. But besides that, man, I would say this has been an amazing experience. I'm so proud of you, bro. And I love the platform you're creating for entrepreneurs, athletes, artists, just people doing good things, getting their stories out there. I think we need more people like you kind of telling their stories and giving them platforms, because we got a lot of good, humble people out here that would never tell their stories elsewhere. Right? They would never tell their stories otherwise. So you doing this has just been huge for me to just kind of turn on and watch and see what some other really successful folks are up to, right?
Sure.
I'll be taking my notes. So congratulations on your success, man.
I appreciate you again for being on the platform and sharing this space, man. That means a lot, just to kind of find time for us to be in the same space and you giving financial free game and you just sharing all the knowledge that you have to the audience. Definitely is going to be a powerful episode, man. Again, shout out to One Goal Media. You know, again, this is episode 9, Financial Free Game with Ayo Idowu and Idowu. Hopefully I said that correct, brother. There we go. I'm trying to make sure I get it right.
Good, man. I got you.
Signing out, man. Y'all can catch, Ayo on the gram, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, just type in my name, Ayo Idowu. On the Instagram, I'm Ayo.Idowu, IDOWU_.
Facts. We're going to drop all of that stuff, man. This is going to be a powerful one, man. And hopefully you guys are checking in to all of the episodes as well, man. We checking out.